Well, hello there, friends. How are you doing today? So if you've been on my channel before, it's been a little while since I've posted, and tonight I wanted to talk about one simple question. Is it selfish to create? Why or why not? It's something I've been wrestling with the last few months, really. Creating in private is one thing. Creating on a public platform or a channel is something totally different. And I've wrestled with this idea of, is this my space and time in life to create, or should I be postponing it until my kids are a little bit older? What does creation or creativity look like as an artist? And here's what I wrote down tonight. And if you are wondering why I've even been thinking about this topic, I got this amazing book. I would highly recommend it if you're artistically inclined or love to create. It's called The Joy of Pursuing Creativity in the Margins of Motherhood. And that's kind of the subtitle, but the main title is Create Anyway. And this is by Ashley Gadd. She's the founder of Coffee and Crumbs. It's an online storytelling community for mothers. And as I've been working on writing more and writing on my blog, I've been thinking about what creativity means in the throes of motherhood. If you don't know me, I have 4 kids and they are ages 1, 4, she just turned 4, 7, and 10. And so that age range is very, very busy and our lives can look really chaotic. And honestly, our 1-year-old is, I would say, the hardest of them all right now. They kind of take turns, but he's in, I would say, an early terrible twos stage. He's about to turn 2, and it is just rough. There are days where he wakes up from nap and wants to be held, or he'll cry for like 30 minutes. And so there's a lot of chunks of time in my day that are devoted to parenting. And I don't really have a lot of margins or spare time, but I really love this book, and I immediately knew I had to pick it up because she talks about trying to write her ideas for this novel on little Post-it cards, literally while her kids are in the tub splashing water on them. And she talks about how she once had the fantasy of being a writer, and that if you were a writer, you would sit in a quiet, serene space in a cabin somewhere overlooking like a lake, and you could just put out all your writing. And she said that's just not a reality. Instead, she has found herself creating in the margins, in the little spaces in between she can find with her children. And so here's what I wrote down tonight, and I wanted to share with you guys my thoughts on this because I know there are some of you out there that have been hesitant on to create or to pursue your dreams or what your creativity even looks like. And I just want to encourage you that you're not alone if you've been struggling with this idea of how do I create, how do I begin? And so here were my initial thoughts. And I love how God starts me off and helps me kind of work through my thoughts in writing. And then he gives me his truth in scripture, and I'm going to end with that tonight. So I said, sometimes I believe creativity is a selfish act. I said, I only have so many hours in the day. So the question remains, what do I prioritize and what do I get rid of? If I only have 1 spare hour in the day and I spend it creating, I'm basically losing that hour to something else. So if there's many things in my life I deem important, such as reading my Bible, spending time with my husband, exercising, trying to take care of my health, maybe some days I need a nap for that hour. But if I only have, let's say, 1 spare hour, and I probably have more than that, but just for the sake of thinking it through, I have to prioritize what gets that hour, what gets my attention. And so it does feel selfish sometimes to say, well, that hour is going to go to creating when there's other things that I could be working on. And I think in reality, God teaches us that if we kind of prioritize him first, the other things will fall in line. And somehow miraculously, we seem to find more hours in the day. And I know that's true. I also think he created me to be a creator, so that when I put it way down on the list as not important or not as important as the other things, then I start to lose bits of myself. I said I was also always conflicted with my children, and I don't really want to put them out there on YouTube. I've featured small snippets of them in my videos, but I've been very hesitant about that because I've heard of very cautious things of, you know, just putting kids out there before they even are aware of what social media is. And so really going forward in creation, I don't want to put my kids out there on YouTube anymore. And it's really hard when most of my day is spent with my children. They're home with me. So where do I find that time to create when they're always around? Even tonight, my ability to talk through this with you guys is my husband has taken them and he's actually working out and has them in a really fun childcare place at the YMCA. So, you know, it's just trying to find that balance, and it's really hard. I'm not gonna lie, it's really hard in motherhood. Another thing I said is, how do I prioritize the creation thing, especially if it feels like I'm losing a bit of myself? I have struggled with feeling a loss of a sense of identity in motherhood. I think we jump right in, almost in crisis mode, especially with every kid you have. You are in it. You are in survival for a while, and you might cast aside things that once defined you or brought you enjoyment. And how do you slowly incorporate those things back in and find schedule and time for them? That's a really tricky thing. And I don't have all the answers. I just know that I've had to have some sit down talks, you know, even with my husband, and say, I don't think life's working for me right now. I need space to be creative because I feel like that's what God has created me to do and be. And so we're working on making those spaces. Case in point right here. So as I was pondering all of this, I started thinking about what God says about creation and kind of how he would respond to my comments that, well, it feels selfish, Lord. It feels selfish to be creative. Another area I wrote down that feels a little selfish is there's a lot of people on YouTube that spend a lot of money in their creative processes. People that decorate their homes in incredible ways that cost money. People that, I don't know, buy incredible looking outfits, or they create really neat food creations. And, you know, some of that takes financial startup. And my family, we've been on a financial path to financial freedom, but we're not fully there yet. And so I don't want to take money that would veer us away from that path and sacrifice it for my creation. So the question left with me is, how can I be a creator right here, right now, with what I have, and thinking and learning that what I have is good enough? And so I started thinking about God. You know, he put beautiful things in creation just for our enjoyment. I don't think he would respond that being a creator is selfish. In fact, when I think about the ocean and the things we've discovered and explored there are creatures in the bottom of the ocean that are so incredibly beautiful and filled with color that, you know, it's taken us decades to even get to the depths to explore them. And yet God created them and put them there, knowing that someday we would find these creatures, we would photograph these creatures, and that they are just brilliant in their colors and their shapes and their designs, just to simply delight us and bring pleasure to our hearts and our minds. It's the same as when I walk out in nature, and I've really been exploring gardening this year and with my plants. Every time I see a new beautiful thing in creation, I'm just blown away by the colors and the shapes and how calm I feel out in nature. And God just does that for our delight and beauty. So I think there's a deeper argument here of, do we need beauty in the world? Yes. And if God has called you to be a person to bring or contribute to that beauty, do you need to make space to do it? And I would say the answer is a resounding yes. And another example that came to mind that I really wanted to share with you guys is that he supernaturally gifted artisans in the Old Testament to create the articles that would go in the tabernacle and that would travel with his people. And I thought about this. I think really what my head was thinking is, you know, does God value beauty or efficiency? or other things too. And I know he does value many things. And there is something to be said about efficiency. But if he was all about efficiency, when his people were carrying this tabernacle through the desert, it's a wilderness. He knew it needed to be quick to be set up and take down. If it was about efficiency, he could have put the 10 Commandments in a box. He could have just left it plain old Jane box that was easy to cover. But instead, he made sure that the tabernacle was filled with beauty, that the box that it was in was so intricately carved and covered in gold, that the robes that the priests wore, that he had to actually supernaturally gift the artisans, because nobody in that time period could create something so beautiful as what he was wanting to be on his people. And all of that was eventually to point us kind of a glimpse heavenward of what someday it will be like. That tabernacle is just but a small mirror on this earth. And so I think about that, and I think about a God who would prioritize all those things when he could have just been efficient. He could have said, let's just make, we need a place for the priests to go into. We need a box to hold my 10 Commandments. They need to be wearing something. We could put them in sackcloth, but he doesn't do that. He fills it with beauty. And that shows me that we serve a God who basically created the idea of aesthetically pleasing. You see that all over the internet with people wanting their houses to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye. God knows that we need things pleasing to the eye. He knows we need to just engage in creation. And so if you want to know where it says this, it's in Exodus chapter 31, where he appoints these artisans to create stuff for his tabernacle. And so Exodus 31, it says, "Then the Lord said to Moses, 'See, I have chosen Bezalel, son of Uri, the son of Hur, the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with skill, ability, and knowledge in all kinds of crafts, to make artistic designs for working gold, silver, and bronze, to set and cut stones, to work in wood, and engage in all kinds of craftsmanship. Moreover, I have appointed Oholiab, son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan, to help him. Also, I have given skill to all the craftsmen to make everything I have commanded you." And he goes on and he lists the things that they're going to be making. He gave skill to the craftsmen. And I would argue 100% that what they're doing here is just as holy as what the priests will be doing. It's just as holy and God ordained as all that would come after. But they had to create a space and a place of beauty. And they were ordained by God's Spirit. They were filled with ability and knowledge. And so for me, as a believer now in the New Testament, where Jesus has come and he has gifted every believer with the Holy Spirit, I also have a personality and giftings that God has given me, skills that I can still be growing and working on. Is it selfish to take time to do creative things? It depends. It depends, right? Sometimes if we put one thing, our skills or our talents, too out of balance of other things, if I'm neglecting my children for it, or just not available to my family, then perhaps it's not the right path for me. But is it okay to cut out that completely? If you're a mama who is exhausted and tired, and you just don't even feel like there's more space for it, perhaps the very, very thing you need is a little space for you to be creative. Perhaps it would pour some energy and some spirit back into your daily routines and tasks. So I don't have all the answers. I'm just sharing with you guys what I've been working through in my head, as I've even taken some time away from YouTube to really reflect, what is my purpose in all of this? What is the purpose of creation? Is there a point to it all? And here's where God is leading me. Yes, Yes, there is. There is a point to putting beauty in the world, to sharing a little bit of yourself because he uniquely gifted and created you. And so if you've been on the fence, because I've been on the fence, or feeling like you're just not good enough or your talents don't measure up, God gave you something. He has you skilled at something. It may not be creating videos, but it might be writing. It might be baking. It might be even in your mothering and your nurturing. It might be a leader at your job as a CEO. He's given you some kind of gift, friend. And I don't think it's an accident. If you've stayed with me all the way through this video, I want you to know that he wants you to use that skill set to bring him glory. So I just thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I hope in the margins of motherhood to keep creating videos and spaces that just share with you a little bit of the things God has shared with me. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again soon on Life in Lilacs.